Ask you, Laura J, you spoke to Andrew Robb, the Trade Minister, a little bit earlier. I'll let you throw to that interview, but give us a bit of a sense. He was someone who, as I understand it, voted for Tony Abbott, but of course he's been regarded by a lot, me included, as probably the best minister in the Abbott government. He's of an older generation, but certainly someone that I think should be there for the long haul, and I doubt someone that would move on from Malcolm Turnbull, even though those two, of course, had their clashes in the past over climate change.
Yeah, and without naming names, I think there are some Howard-era ministers that could very well step aside for some of the fresh blood, the new guard coming through, and that would be really quite, you know, justified for Malcolm Turnbull to do that. Andrew Robb is not one of those. He's achieved, you know, 3 free trade agreements. That is so important. There was some speculation about who he voted for in this leadership spill. I asked him who he voted for. This is what he had to say. Andrew Robb, thanks so much for your time. There's been a bit of speculation about who you voted for, but can you put it to bed? Who did you vote for?
I voted for Tony Abbott. He has given me some great responsibilities, and he backed them himself very much, the negotiations. So I owed him the loyalty in that regard, and he's been a long-term friend as well. So you know, that's where I finished up.
I appreciate your loyalty, but do you think Malcolm Turnbull is the best direction for the party?
Oh, look, the party's made that decision, and from my experience, the party room is sacrosanct. I mean, that's in the end where all of us are ultimately judged, or we're held accountable, and certainly the leader. And the party has made quite a decisive decision, and I respect that 100%. And you know, they seldom make mistakes, and I do think that the way it's all been conducted and the gracious way that Tony said he will conduct himself, all of these things suggest that we will lock in, we all have to lock in to develop the unity and the sense of purpose that will carry us through to the next election.
The Prime Minister did make a point of saying that there was disloyalty, there was white-handing of his leadership, there was backgrounding against him. Do you agree with that assessment?
Well, clearly there's been some of that.
But is it just the nature of politics, or was it something different this time around?
Well, I think he made some fairly pertinent comments about people being reported who don't declare who they are publicly, and now that's always been around, but it seems to be far more the order of the day these days compared with 15 or 20 years ago. And usually 15 or 20 years ago you knew you could pick who it was, but that sort of thing can be debilitating, and I think the media has also a responsibility to put the pressure on sources to have them declare themselves, because you know, this is very important. Government's very important. Prime Ministership is extremely important, and you know, it's the 24/7 media cycle and all of this. It's more than a game, and sometimes you feel people just enjoying the game, all the participants, and not focusing on the deep responsibilities that we have as parliamentarians to improve the lot of all Australians.
Malcolm Turnbull made the point yesterday saying that the economic rhetoric, the economic message wasn't getting through. Australians weren't on board with it. Does the message have to change, or does the strategy have to change as well?
Well, for whatever reason, and there are a whole lots of reasons, the message wasn't getting through. And now we've got a new messenger, and there'll be some new entrants to our advocacy role, and let's hope that that will be effective. I mean, that's what the party room has really decided, that that we had a lot of polls in a row which were not good. In the end, the polling is our share price, and if it's down low enough and long enough, then there's almost a responsibility on you know, those that can hold the leadership responsible to do something. And and they've done something. And
if polling is your share price, how long does Malcolm Turnbull then have to turn this around? I mean, because it is poll to poll, we do focus on the polls. You know, you can often do these kind of interviews, and someone like yourself might say, "Oh, we're not taking any notice of the polls. You know, the only poll that counts is the one on election day." But that's not true, is it?
No.
So the polls will need to improve for Malcolm Turnbull, won't they?
well, I mean, we're less than 12 months away from an election, so obviously we have to become competitive, and we have to get close to a winning position, if not a winning position, by the time the campaign starts. I'm very confident. Malcolm is a powerful communicator. He's a powerful force, and I do feel that he will inject a lot of confidence about the future. There's every good reason for confidence about the future. I mean, what's going on in our region is just spectacular.
And that is under your portfolio area as well, so you'd fully expect to stay in your role as Trade and Investment Minister, wouldn't you?
Well, I would like to. I've got a lot of unfinished work still. There's a lot that can be still done in the region, but in the end, that's the prerogative of the Prime Minister. So I'll take what I'm offered.
Mr. Robb, what do you make of the argument, though, that some Howard-era ministers need to perhaps be shipped out for some of the new guard to come in? Not yourself, but perhaps some of your colleagues.
Well, it's hard not to speak. You know, look, I think people should be judged on their performance, right?
Lot to be said for some new guard, isn't there, though?
Yeah, but there's a number coming through. I think we've got an unbelievably powerful backbench. I think the future is looking very good, not just for a few years, but 15 or 20 years. You need a mix always, but we do need people coming through, and you know, we've only been in government 2 years, for goodness sake, and there's quite a few have in that time got higher, and there'll be a lot more introduced, you know, and I think there would have been after the next election, even under Tony Abbott, right? So I know when I was that age, I was impatient, and I think it's a good thing to be. You know, you want people who are impatient about getting on. So that's understandable, but at the same time, if the people have been around and have got, you know, some scars on their back, that's a good thing. But they've got to be performing, and they've got to have energy, and as long as that's happening, I think you should get that mix right. Okay,
just one final question. There was white-hot anger last night amongst Tony Abbott's supporters about how this had gone down. I think there's a lot of ill feeling in the party today. That will take time to heal, I accept that. But what do you say to fellow Tony Abbott supporters out there who are feeling that white-hot anger about going forward and any kind of chance of destabilising Malcolm Turnbull?
Look, my sense is there's a lot of deep bruising amongst a lot of people. They've got to work through that, I understand that. But in these circumstances, they've got to, I think, respect the verdict of the party room. That's where we're all accountable in the end. And I do feel it's quite critical that we lock in. We've got less than 12 months. We've made the change. We've got, I think, a very good record of things that have been done, and there's a lot more to do. We can be in a very competitive position. We have to be. Bill Shorten would frighten everybody if he got the opportunity to be Prime Minister. So we've got to lock in, we've got to show unity, and then we've got to show energy, and we've got to show hope for the future.
Just finally, do we need change in the party arm? Should Brian Loughnane stay or go?
Well, that's all of those things. I'll leave that up to Brian and others to work through. He's been a very powerful strategist for us for many years and done a great job. So that's something for he and the leader to work through.
Minister Andrew Robb, thank you.
My pleasure.
The Trade Minister, Andrew Robb, who I expect will stay the Trade Minister, Peter, under a Malcolm Turnbull Prime Ministership. One of the most salient points out of that interview, I thought, was when he said that polls are our currency, and if your stocks go down, well, it's incumbent on those people that do have the power to perhaps tap a leader on the shoulder. And look, Andrew Robb is someone that did vote for Tony Abbott. He made the case there that it was more out of loyalty than anything else, but an important message to those Tony Abbott supporters that might be feeling bruised today is that the party needs to unify and get behind Malcolm Turnbull.
Yeah, look, absolutely, particularly at the end there, Laura, making that point very, very strongly. The idea